Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Pixonality, for this opportunity. My name is Simon Castillo with Hogan Assessment, and I'm here to share some information regarding why leadership development is broken and how to fix it. And we wanted to start mentioning that during the experience and different moments, we have found seven common problems or seven common issues during multiple experiences. Even in my personal past working experience in other corporations, I have found that many times there are some problems. And what I've seen is that regardless of the organization or regardless of the role that I've been doing, some of my colleagues as well, um, we've been facing similar problems, similar issues. So we wanted to put together this document and share with you all, and probably you will feel identified and connected to what we're going to talk today here. So not only talking about the problems or issues, but also we wanted to bring some solutions, what we propose to handle and solve those problems that we find in leadership development programs. Then we'll have some closing ideas, Q&A, and we'll be happy to share and discuss afterwards. So I wanted to start saying that the talent development industry, it's a big industry. We're talking about big numbers, like globally, the size of the industry is 366 billion of dollars. In the US only, last year, companies spent 166 billions. And the good news there is that 95% of the companies are thinking to keep that investment, keep that level of investment, or even increase in the next years. We saw also that where these investments are going towards, and we found that there are three specific learning sessions or learning strategies. 74% of that is going towards instructor-led training. And then we have other similar number of investments is related to assessments based on personality, based on 360. And we see that a little bit more than 60% are planning on doing executive coaching on this. But the question is that, we wanted to know what leaders, what CEO were thinking about the impact or the effectiveness of this program, the leadership development program. So we found out that 55% of the CEOs are very concerned about the uh, education or development of next generation of leaders. They're very worried about what level, what quality of leadership we are going to have in organization for the next years, for the future. And these are conversation. This topic is always a permanent topic. The concern and questions related, how do I develop the leader that I need in the future? Not to understand the leader that I had, but the leader that I will need in the future. So only 10% of the CEO thinks that leadership development program have a clear impact in the business. And also only 11% of the company thinks that they have a strong bench in the succession planning ladder to lead the companies in the future. And also HR thinks, only 28% of HR thinks that the organization have high quality leadership. And not only the leaders, we wanted to explore what do employees think about leadership development program. And we found out that around 65 to 75% of employees, they reported in the US that the most stressful part of their job is their boss. Is the worst part of their job. 65% of Americans think that they prefer to fire their boss instead receiving an increase in their salary. They prefer to sacrifice their salary as long as the boss is fired. And 65% of the workforce feels like alienated and disengaged with the organizational goals. So I wanted to bring this contextual information to understand about the problems, potential cause of these situations. And we found these 7, but we wanted to bring some actions and some solutions to help you solve these issues. So problem number 1, we have found that it's been a problem. It's been a challenge always how to define leadership. So we found that defining leadership incorrectly is the one of the main problems that we have found. And when we talk about how organizations use the traditional view or the traditional point of view to define leadership, it's that organizations only pay attention to the title, to the role, or to the person who is in position of power or positions of leadership. And then when we want to learn and know about leadership, we go and ask them. And we want to ask them to generate content, to generate models. And that's the only restricted small group of leaders by their titles where we tend to go to ask for information and when we are defining leadership in the organization. So this is very limited when we want to understand what is the approach of leadership. Second problem that we have found is that organizations tend to focus on the wrong outcomes. What does this mean? Is that the organizations understand or trying to get feedback about the effectiveness of the leadership program, asking the participant if they like it, did you enjoy it? It was a good location, a good logistics. And then we say, did you get promoted? How did you evaluate yourself about your improvement in the program? Did you improve your performance ratings on there? So if we pay attention to these outcomes, that's something wrong. That's something that is not going to tell us very objectively that what's the impact or the results of the program. And we see that we have a very limited view of the feedback of the return, because all the process, all the decision making of who is going to the program is the boss, the supervisor. Like here, we see that James has appointed Jim to go to the leadership program. And then James is the one who provides feedback. James is the one that assigned the performance, the rating reviews. And then at the end, James is the one who promoted Jim. So was this because of the leadership program? Was this because of the expected improvement in the performance? We don't know that. We can follow on that. Problem number 3 is that we've been focusing on the wrong targets. Organizations have been focusing on the wrong target. In this slide here, we try to see a pattern in scores, and the graphic shows in the bottom, in the X of the Y's, the personality characteristics based on the 5-factor model, and on the Y-X, we see a scores, percentiles score. And the pattern that we see here is that there is not a pattern. We can have different scores, we can have different characteristics of the leaders, but is that what we need? Is that what we are targeting? And then it's easy to think about all this set of targets that we want to hit or we want to develop. And then we talk about all this set of competencies, all this set of behaviors that maybe the leader of the organization or the board that decided to bring a new model, and then change in 2 years, they change again. So the leaders know, okay, we were developing and working on these characteristics or these competencies, and now they're changed. They're not there anymore. Um, and this is because organizations think that one size fits all. So we have one model, and you need to achieve this competencies or show, display these competencies, and then you'll be the leader that we want or the leader that we need in the future. And also it's very unscientific and without any theory behind that model. It's also very aspirational, very unrealistic. It's based on the previous experience of other leaders that they enjoyed very well a program and they want to implement it in the organization. So, and when we talk about different set of competencies, then we're talking about competency models. And we are always, or organizations are always changing competency model of leaders. And I don't want to talk bad or that is bad having a competency model. The challenge here is how we can separate these competencies or this set of competencies from universal behaviors that we're going to see in the solution part. We know that the competency model are very useful when we talk about job descriptions, interview, rewards, performance review. But when we talk about development, we want to include or bring the competency model to leadership development, which is something different. It's something that we have found as a problem. Problem number 4 that we have found is when we want to have the peanut butter approach. What do we mean by the peanut butter approach? Here's the thing. Imagine that we have the set of participants, the group of participants for the program. We assess them, we identify meaningful differences in there with very good tools that we understood, and we start putting together content to be executed or to be covered during the program. But then after we do all that, then there comes the peanut butter, right? We want to cover every single participant with the same tools, with the same content. And those needs that we identify at the beginning, they're just there, right? They're not valid input for designing the program. And we can see some examples like in the education system with kids in basic school, at high school, that sometimes we want them or parents, we want them to develop different skills, to be more in the STEM area, in arts, sports. But then we come and we give them the same content, the same courses, and it's very few are like we call additional activities or complementary activities, which is the real thing that they want to develop. So it's just I wanted to bring this an example that it's part of what is happening in other contexts as well. Problem number 5 that we have found is that organizations overlook the importance of context. So we think that one competency model or one leadership development program fits to everyone. And the reality is that one size fits none. All right. We need to understand what is the organization, values, culture, strategy, business goal of the specific organization where that leader or those leaders um, are working, are part of the organization. But not only the organization, also the leader's position. What's their function? What's their role? What's the culture of the team? Direct report, the boss, the clients. They're different. So because of that, that's when the um, competencies start meaning something different for each one. Let's take an example for here, like creativity. If we want to develop creativity and we want to do it in the same way for everyone, what does creativity mean for marketing, product innovation, sales? Probably is great, is a skill, is a strength to be successful in the role. But what's going to happen in those organizations where the core business is safety, is compliance, is legal? It's very high regulated industry where this company is working. So do we really want to develop creativity? We want this position to be creative. So that's why when we don't consider context in the program, it brings another problem. We can have the same word, even the same concept of the word that we're talking, but when we think in different contexts, like the word coding for developers is great, is what they do every day. But probably coding in the healthcare industry means something that will represent a headache, a problem, then it's totally different how we're going to handle the concept of what we are talking at the moment. Then problem number 6 that we have found is that organizations neglect the psychology of development. The psychology of development is a science that brings a lot of tools, a lot of content already validated to handle one important central point, which is change, behavior change of the leadership, because that's what we want to achieve with the development program. So when we don't pay attention to how to handle change, it's going to be very more hard or even harder to what change is normally. Or if we don't have the proven techniques or methodology to set a goal, easily is going to be an unrealistic goal when we talk about behavior change, or when we don't know what to do or how to handle feedback, because it's very, rare, strange that we have it. How to handle a scarce of resources. All those tools or all these challenges, psychology of behavior change helps a lot. Just an example of this is the cure of motivation and ability. We know that if we are highly motivated, the change is going to be easier. The skills will come up with more natural, more enjoyable for the participant. So if I am motivated, then it's going to be easy. So if you don't motivate me, or if I don't get the motivators that I need, then change is going to be harder and harder. This is just an example of the different techniques or resources that psychology of behavior change will bring when designing program. Problem number 7 is we see disconnection in the development processes. So we see, if we think about a regular process, a sequence of the 3 big steps in the development process, which is self-knowledge, gain new knowledge and apply it in our workplace. So we understand and we can think that the self-knowledge, we use all the assessment, we understand our strength, our weaknesses, what we need to develop, and then we learn and understand how to do it. And then we practice, we understand the step by step, we understand the concept that we want to incorporate. And even we have all these different learning strategies like simulations. I'm in the classroom, I'm learning from my colleagues in during the program. And then I go to my workplace, to my role, to apply all what I learned, practicing, applying my skills, my learning, right? So what we've seen is that there is disconnection in some point of this step of the development process. So we've seen that we do the assessments, but when we try to create learning activities, we just bring or buy something that is already designed there and just implement it. So sometimes we see that there is not a connection. This learning activity is not responding to the assessment that was done. And similar happens when we try to go to the application to apply the knowledge. It's great, but then it has nothing to do with was identified at the beginning. It has nothing to do with my need as an individual in the program. So that's when there is a disconnection in there, and that is a problem, definitely. And we can use as an analogy if something similar happens when we go and try to do fitness program where we want to achieve some result, right? The expert do an assessment, we learn how to do it, and then we go and apply. But what happens if the assessment is not done correctly? Probably I'm gonna go and work with some equipment that I don't need or that I needed, or I don't eat what I need to eat. So it's kind of similitude when there is a disconnection and the development processes in here. Sorry. Now let's start talking about the solutions for the problems that we presented. And the solution for number one is redefine leadership. See that the word is redefine because probably the organization already defined, but did it in a wrong way or in the way that was learned in the past. And that's when we're talking about the traditional view. But to respond to the question, to know, do we know if you are an effective leader? Stop looking at the title and look at your team's output. See how your team is performing, if it's achieving their goal, if they're engaged. So looking at the team results is how is I can say that I'm an effective leader. Also, if you want to learn about leadership and create the model and understand those behaviors predictors of success, then go and ask to the team, study the team results and their leaders. How did they play out? How did they interact? And from there, you create your model and you build the materials, content that you want to multiply, that you want to implement in the organization. It is important to realize and to create the change that the leader is not the leader by the title. The leader is a leader as long as they become a server of your team. You are an instrument, you are a resource of your team to help them outperform and to achieve their goals. And the greatest part here is to start thinking that good leadership can come from anywhere. Good leadership is not only because of the title that the individual holds. It can be in anywhere. It's what we call the hidden gems. They just haven't had opportunity to come and bring their talents or their skills to the program. So redefine leadership. See in this picture, how is the performance of each one of the individual? They all do the perfect execution. Everybody has a role. So imagine the leader of this team. What was required for this leader to be able to take this team as it is? Um, so it is important. Good leaders build effective teams. Bad leaders destroy teams and set them apart. Then one lesson that we want to keep in mind here is that leadership is about followership. Leadership is about results of the team, is about the direct reports performance. And once we establish the leadership model or the leadership characteristics or content that we want to develop, then measure that and then reward it. These are techniques to reinforce and make these behaviors to be permanent and stay in the individual. Second solution that we want to present is refocus your outcomes. What do you expect to receive after the leadership program has been implemented? So do we see practical, actionable, relevant goals to change behaviors? Did the leader take actions in these goals after the program, and you see clear modifications in the behaviors or creation or new behaviors of the leader? If we included that, normally we do assessments at the beginning, post-program programs, post-program assessments, or 360 evaluations, and you reconduct those assessments after 12, 18 months, and you see any change, that's another way, a different way to see what are the outcomes on the program. So the next solution, number 3, is refocus your target. Okay, so consider what are you going to develop? What do you really want to develop? So use models that are scientific design, that you have data behind that, that there is a proven leadership theory behind that, and measure universal leadership behavior. This is going to be very powerful in the next couple of slides, and I'm going to talk with more details about this. And also recognize how important it is to develop and have an inclusive leader that considers diversity as a value and be able to include the different profiles in the team members of that they need to lead. So typically, and we were talking about competencies again, when we talk about leadership competencies, normally these models are saying that there is a presence or absence of the competencies. Is it good or bad? Is high scores are always good, right? Or context is not part of the picture. So what feedback, or how can we create actions after we work with this leadership competency model? What do we say if there is a presence or absence? Oh, good work, good job, just keep doing it. Or if there is good or bad, we just say you need to improve in this area. This is the action plan for this or that. Or if you have just high scores, then you say, oh, you don't have any need. You don't have any development need. So you are good. And you forget about the implications of having high scores or low scores. So you are not covering that. And you don't consider context normally in leadership competencies. So what we want here to propose is that we start thinking on universal leadership behaviors, no more about competencies. It's more about leadership behavior. So when we do the assessments and we get all the data, all the results in there, and we want to talk and we want to understand, how do you make decisions, right? How do you approach tasks? Is more, you need to process information more from the numbers, from the verbal. You need to be more connected. And what are the implications, positive and negative, that you will get if you approach these tasks in your role? Also, how do you manage your demands? How do you manage your requests from your team? Um, how is this going to affect your team if you do it or not? So this part of being empathic with your team, it's important to reflect on. Um, the other part, which is an universal leadership behavior, is what do you do? How do you handle good or bad news that you receive from your performance? Do you take it? Do you incorporate them and implement? Are they good? Do you feel rewarded? Do you reinforce the behavior? So this is how coachable you are, how open you are to receive feedback. And also, universal leadership behaviors consider context. So in this context, in this role, what changes do you need to do? What strengths do you need to develop? With the same profile, with the same characteristics, so context is going to be very important. So uh, universal leadership models offer a more nuanced interpretation. So you have more options instead saying good or bad or high or low. You have the analysis and the approach more holistic, in a holistically way, for to understand your leadership skill. We want to move from the what to the so what. Like, now, what do I do with all this information that I have? So our invitation is to move from leadership competency models to universal leadership behaviors and start thinking about that. Solution number 4 is to take advantage of the individual differences identified in the assessment data. So we see it's very frequent that when the participant, the leader, goes to a training program, you get the folder, the binder, and you just put in your shelf behind your back in your desk, and then you just use it. So, or you just leave it in there. So the invitation is to use it, to create business simulations, to implement that in project. Where what kind of projects can you use your skills, or what skills you need to put in place, or what characteristics or pitfalls you need to be aware of when you are going to participate in a common project. So uh, don't forget about the value of the data that you get when you do the assessment. Solution number 5, for those situations when you forget about context, treat context as the queen, as the king of the journey, of the project, right? Context is everything. Context is going to tell you the implication, the impact, those internal organizational acumen that you need to develop or to include to be successful being a leader in that organization. Solution number 6 is adapt for the psychology of development. Take from the psychology of development those tools that you need to teach, to learn, to align, um, specifically when we talk about change of behaviors. We know that change is hard, change is difficult. Because it requires to be constant, to be permanent, so it can last. It is your new behavior that you're going to show, and for sure, change or new behaviors to improve. And we're talking here behavior, and that is going to um, make your goals more attainable. Change that is going to understand how to address resource constraint, it's going to make your change easier, right? Because it's going to give you a clear path of what do you need to do and how do you assess, how do you measure the impact of the actions that you are doing. So let's include psychology of change in leadership development program. And the final solution that we are proposing here is fix the broken links in the development processes that we were mentioning before. So if you see a disconnection, if you identify a disconnection between the assessment, between the development or the knowledge acquisition, then fix it. You here in this session, probably you are decision makers, you are leading development project, or if you are functional leaders in this session right now, you're listening to me. So take actions and go and fix the link and identify that there is a connection between all the processes involved in the leadership development and do it. As a closing thought, we invite you all to think carefully about leadership practices. We are going to create a huge impact if we start implementing these changes and these redefinitions of the variables that we just reviewed. So stop concentrating the leadership topic in few hands of those who holds the title, and let's start democratizing leadership. In that way, we will democratize coaching as well. So we want to help, we want to provide coaching services or coaching actions, then we need to democratize and provide opportunities of development for everyone. Another part of the closing thought is break from tradition and redefine leadership. Definitely that is the number one recommendation. Break the loop of circular reasoning and reevaluate outcomes. How do we see the impact, the results expected of the leaders when they attend leadership programs? Break free from the chains of leadership competency models, and let's start thinking in universal leadership behaviors. They're permanent, regardless of the competency model or the new trend that is coming in the industry, focusing on leadership, universal leadership behaviors will be more effective for the program. And also break open your leadership development budget. Definitely see the trend of the industry, see what companies are trying or willing to do in the next year, the same or even better, and start thinking that development is not expense, it's not spending resources, it's about creating value for the organization. So with this, I end my participation, my presentation. Please send your questions to our emails to Jack. Here is his contact information, but I'll be happy also to provide answers, questions that you have. Again, you are going to receive a copy of this presentation with the references and all the sources that we used to present and include in this webinar. So that's all on my side. Thank you very much for your attention. And thank you, Jack and Pixonality team, again for the invitation. Thank you. Au revoir. Bye-bye.